Ellie Story, Chapter 11. It wasn't just work that was different with Maya. Almost everything about her was different from my old life with Jacob. There were all the cats, for one thing. She also knew many more people than Jacob did. Most nights she went to a larger home with lots of people and a wonderful-smelling woman named Mama. Mama was always cooking. That's why she smelled so good. There were little children running around playing with each other every time Maya, and I went for a visit. The older children called, "Ellie, Ellie, Ellie's here," and almost forgot to say hello to Maya. The boys threw balls for me, which I patiently brought back. The girls put hats on me and laughed so hard they had to hold on to each other to stay on their feet. And the very small ones crawled on me and over me and poked fingers in my eyes. I didn't mind too much, though. I remembered how my brothers and sisters and I used to play with Bernie. These little ones were like puppies. I understood that. They didn't know how to play correctly yet, and you just had to be patient while they learned. When I got tired of having my fur pulled, I just shake myself gently to push them off and go sit under the table in the kitchen. Mama would be in the room stirring things in bowls or tasting things in pots, and there was almost always something tasty that needed to be licked up off the floor. I loved the kitchen. At her own house, Maya had a neighbor named Al who liked to come over and talk to her. There was a word he so often used that I began to recognize it. The word was help. "Do you need help carrying those boxes, Maya?" he asked. "Do you need help fixing your door?" "No, no," Maya would say. "Did you get a new dog?" Al asked one day not long after I'd come to live with Maya. He bent down and scratched me behind the ears in a way that made me love him instantly. Not everybody scratches right, just hard enough and in the perfect place. Al did. I leaned against him happily so he wouldn't stop. He smelled of papers and ink and coffee and nervousness. "Yes," Maya said, talking a little more quickly than she usually did. "She's a department search and rescue dog." Maya's skin was growing warm and her palms had started to sweat. This always happened when Al came over and said help, but I could tell she wasn't frightened of him. It was odd. Still, as long as Al kept scratching, I didn't care too much. "Do you need help training your new dog?" Al asked. I knew they were talking about me. I wagged my tail. No, Maya said. "Ellie has already been trained. We need to learn to work together as a team." I wagged extra when I heard the words Ellie and work. Al straightened up and stopped scratching. "Maya, he started to say. "I should probably go," Maya mumbled. "Your hair is very pretty today," Al blurted. The two of them stared at each other, both so anxious it felt as if something bad was going to happen any minute. I looked around to see if something was going to attack us, but I couldn't see anything more threatening than Emmett, who was staring at us through a window, probably jealous that I got to be outside and he didn't. "Thank you, Al," Maya said. "Would you like—" "I'll let you go," Al said. "Oh, unless do you need help with anything?" No, Maya said. Al nodded and walked away. I could feel Maya's sadness, and I pushed myself closer to her so that she could scratch my ears too. Maya and I went to work almost every day. Sometimes we found Wally and sometimes Belinda. On some days, a few of the older children from Mama's house came too. That was fun. They were always so happy to be found and called me a good dog over and over and wanted to play tug on a stick until Maya, laughing, told them that I had to do more work. Maya was much slower than Jacob, though, panting and sweating from the moment we started running. I learned not to be impatient when I circled back for her, and all she could do was put her hands on her knees for a few moments. Once, after I'd found Wally and come back to show Maya, she was crying. A burst of frustration and helplessness swept over her, and tears came with it. I stared at her, wanting her to be ready. I knew she was sad, but I couldn't comfort her now. We were working. She knew it, too. She wiped her face quickly. "Okay, Ellie, show me." I took her to where Wally was sitting on a big rock by the stream. We all went back to the picnic table together, and Wally took cool, wet cans out of a plastic box and handed one to Maya. Maya put a little bowl down on the grass for me and filled it with water from the bottle. I slurped it up and lay down in the shade of the table. I could feel Maya's worry, and I put my head on her foot. "We're not good enough to be certified, are we?" Maya asked. I heard her put her elbows on the table and sigh. "Ellie's about the best dog I've ever seen," Wally said, a little cautiously. He sounded nervous. "No, I know, it's me. I've always been heavy." "What?" "No, I mean—" Wally was actually scared now. I sat up, wondering what the danger was with this time. It's okay. I've actually lost some weight, like 4 pounds. Really? That's great. But you weren't bad or anything, Wally stammered. I smelled the sweat pouring out of his forehead. I don't know. Maybe go to the track. That would help, or something. I do go to the track. Right, yes. Wally was so anxious. I whined a little. Well, okay, I should go now. I don't know, Maya went on sadly. I didn't realize there would be so much running. It's a lot harder than I thought it would be. Maybe I should resign. Let somebody take over who's in better shape. Hey, why don't you talk to Belinda about this? Wally said desperately. Maya sighed, and Wally, full of relief, got up and left. I lay back down next to Maya. Whatever horrible danger had been lurking seemed to have gone away. The next day, Maya and I didn't work. She put on some soft shoes, grabbed my leash, and took me to a long road that ran along the sand next to that big pond, the ocean, where I had found the little girl named Charlotte. Dogs were everywhere, but even though Maya didn't give me any commands, I sensed that this was a new kind of work. So I ignored the little barking and dashing back and forth. Maya and I ran together down that road, farther than we'd ever run before. I sensed a new kind of determination in her. She kept going as the sun rose steadily in the sky, and I kept pace beside her. It was the longest run we'd ever taken together. It went on until I felt Maya's body fill up with pain and exhaustion. Then at last, she turned back. The return trip was just as determined. We stopped a few times, and Maya let me drink out of faucets set into the concrete next to very smelly buildings. Then Maya would start to run again. Each time she went a little slower, but she kept going. At last, the parking lot came into view ahead of us, and Maya slowed to a walk. Oh my, she whispered. By the time we got to the truck, she was limping. We were both panting pretty hard. Maya sat down on the back of the truck and drank half a bottle of water and then went down to hang her head between her legs. Then she threw up the water she'd just drunk. I came and put my head on Maya's knee, sad that she was hurting so much. She was too tired to even lift a hand to stroke my head. You okay? A young woman passing by asked. She was sweating from her run, but breathing easily. Maya nodded without even looking up. The next day we did find again. Maya groaned as she eased herself out of the car and walked to the picnic table. I sat at her feet waiting eagerly for the command. Maya sighed. Find Ellie, she said. Her voice was low and sad. I leapt forward, sniffing the ground eagerly. I couldn't smell Wally anywhere, but I caught Belinda's trail easily. She'd walked over this ground not long ago at all. It would not be hard to find her. I heard Maya groan, and I hesitated and looked back. Maya is walking as if every step hurt, and she was so slow. I ran forward, following Belinda's trail under some trees. She forced her way between two bushes, leaving her scent all over the leaves. I followed. Then I stopped. I shoved my body back between the bushes and ran to Maya. She looked down at me in surprise. Ellie? Having trouble, girl? Fine. No, I wasn't the one having trouble. Maya was limping after me, determined, but she couldn't go fast at all, and I could tell from how she was walking how much her muscles hurt. I didn't want to get too far ahead. She might not be able to catch up with me. And then how could I show Belinda to her? I trotted along the trail. It was hard to slow down. The trail was clear, and I wanted to charge ahead to find Belinda as quickly as possible. But I kept my pace slow so that Maya could keep up. I heard her push through the bushes behind me, and I dashed to her side, glanced up at her, and turned back to the trail on the ground. Belinda had waded through a little stream and walked along it, but I found her easily on the other side and kept going. Maya plodded grimly through the water behind me. I dashed up a little hill and paused on the top to be sure Maya was following. When I was sure she was, I ran ahead through a stand of tall grass. Belinda's scent was growing stronger with every step I took. I burst out of the grass, and there Belinda was, stretched out under a tree, her head leaning back against the trunk. Her eyes were closed. I ran back to Maya. She was making her way slowly up the hill. Oh, Ellie, good, she panted when she saw me. Show me. I walked up the hill, keeping just a few feet ahead of Maya, glancing back over my shoulder often to be sure she was still with me. We pushed our way through the tall grass and found Belinda asleep under the tree. Maya took a few deep breaths. Good dog. You are such a good dog, Ellie, she whispered to me, and she sniffed hard. Then she cleared her throat. Belinda woke up with a start. She glanced at her wrist, and I felt a little shock of surprise come off her. Just had an off day, Maya said. Belinda nodded and smiled and got to her feet. That night, Maya went to take a bath while I stayed in the living room. Tinkerbell was, as usual, hiding from the world. Stella was in the bedroom checking out my bed. I could tell from the smell that she'd even tried sleeping there while Maya and I were at work. "Ellie," Maya called. "Ellie, come." Only her head was sticking up out of the water in the bathtub. I sniffed curiously at the warm bubbles and lapped up a little water, but it was terrible. I shook my head to chase the taste away. Emmett sat on the bath mat, licking himself and waiting for something to happen that he could ignore. Maya reached out a wet hand and stroked my head. "I'm sorry, Ellie." Her voice was low and said, "I'm just not good enough. I just can't keep up with you in the field. You're such a good dog. You need someone who can handle you." I wagged when I heard that I was a good dog. Usually people were happy when I was good, but Maya's sadness did not change. She looked lonely in the water all by herself. Would she be happier if I got in the tub with her? I put my paws onto the edge. Maya was already lying on the bottom, so she couldn't sink, which made it look a little more fun than jumping into the fountain after Jacob, or even splashing in the ocean. Emmett stopped licking himself and looked at me without any of the proper respect. I'm not sure he ever understood that I could eat him in 2 bites if I wanted to. Just because I didn't want to was no reason for him to get snooty about it. Then he waltzed out of the room with his tail in the air as if he were daring me to chase him down and do something about the fact that this house had too many cats. "Tomorrow I have a surprise for you, Ellie," Maya said. Well, okay. I'd gone this far. I heaved my back legs up and splashed into the tub right on top of Maya, sinking down through the clouds of bubbles. Warm water sloshed over the edge and onto the bathroom floor. "Ellie!" Maya bursted into laughter, her delight blowing on the sadness like a candle.